Pinocchio. Once upon a time, in a small little village, there lived a kind old woodcarver named Geppetto. Geppetto lived all alone in a tiny workshop filled with clocks, tools, and pieces of wood. Even though he smiled often, deep inside he wished for one thing more than anything else in the world: a child to love. One evening, Geppetto picked up a special piece of wood and said, I think I'll make a puppet tonight. He carved carefully for hours. First the head, then the arms, then the legs, and finally a tiny wooden nose. When he finished, he looked proudly at the puppet. I shall call you Pinocchio. Suddenly, the puppet's eyes blinked. Its fingers wiggled, and before Geppetto could even speak, Pinocchio jumped right off the table. Whoa! Geppetto cried. Pinocchio laughed and danced around the workshop. I can move, I can talk, I can dance. That night, after Pinocchio had fallen asleep, something magical happened. A beautiful blue fairy appeared in the workshop, surrounded by sparkling light. She smiled gently at the little puppet. Pinocchio, she whispered, if you learn to be honest, brave, and kind, one day you may become a real boy. The next morning, Geppetto was overjoyed. A talking puppet, he said happily. You must go to school and learn many wonderful things. He even sold his old coat to buy Pinocchio a school book. Pinocchio hugged him tightly. Thank you, father. I promise I'll make you proud. And off he went toward school. But along the way, Pinocchio heard music and laughter coming from a puppet theater. Oh, he said curiously. Maybe I'll just look for a minute. 1 minute turned into many minutes. Soon, Pinocchio was dancing on stage with the puppets, while the audience cheered loudly. Bravo! Bravo! But the theater owner, a grumpy man named Stromboli, had other ideas. A living puppet, he shouted greedily. You'll make me rich. He locked Pinocchio inside a cage. Pinocchio felt scared and lonely. I just wanted to have fun, he sighed. Suddenly, the blue fairy appeared again. Pinocchio, she said kindly, how did you end up here? Pinocchio felt nervous. I went straight to school, he lied. But as soon as he lied, his wooden nose began to grow and grow and grow. Pinocchio gasped, My nose! The fairy nodded gently. A lie keeps growing until everyone can see it. Pinocchio lowered his head sadly. I'm sorry, I didn't go to school. The fairy smiled. Telling the truth is the first step to becoming better. With a wave of her wand, she set Pinocchio free. Now remember, she said, good choices matter. Pinocchio promised to do better, but trouble wasn't finished with him yet. Soon he met two sneaky tricksters, a fox and a cat. School is boring, the fox said slyly. You should come to Pleasureland, said the cat. There are games, candy, rides, and no rules. No rules? Pinocchio asked excitedly. That sounds amazing. At Pleasureland, children ate endless sweets, smashed things, played all day, and never studied. At first, Pinocchio thought it was the greatest place ever. But then, something strange began to happen. The naughty boys slowly started turning into donkeys. They grew ears, tails, and loud donkey brays. Hee-haw, hee-haw. Pinocchio looked at his own hands in horror. Uh-oh! Realizing the danger, he escaped just in time. At last, Pinocchio decided he truly wanted to change. "I have to find father," he said bravely. When he returned home, Geppetto was gone. The villagers told him terrible news. "Geppetto sailed out to sea, looking for you, but a giant whale swallowed his boat." Pinocchio's eyes widened. "Father is in danger?" Without hesitation, he ran to the ocean and dove into the water. Through giant waves and dark waters, Pinocchio searched and searched until finally there it was, the enormous whale. Pinocchio gulped. Then courage filled his heart. "For father!" He swam right into the whale's mouth. Inside the whale's belly, he found Geppetto weak and tired beside a tiny fire. "Pinocchio!" Geppetto whispered in disbelief. "Father!" They hugged tightly. "I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you." Geppetto smiled warmly. "You came back. That's what matters." Together, they made a clever plan. Pinocchio piled wood onto the fire until thick smoke filled the whale's belly. The whale sneezed so hard, "Achoo!" that Pinocchio and Geppetto shot right out into the ocean. They swam safely back to shore and finally returned home together. That night, Pinocchio sat beside Geppetto's bed. He had learned so much: to tell the truth, to think carefully, to be brave, and to care for others. As moonlight filled the room, magical blue sparkles appeared once again. The fairy smiled proudly. "Pinocchio, you have proven yourself honest, brave, and loving." A warm light surrounded him, and suddenly Pinocchio was no longer made of wood. He had become a real boy. Geppetto opened his eyes and gasped happily, "Pinocchio, you're real!" Pinocchio smiled the biggest smile of all, and from that day on, he and Geppetto, they lived happily together as a family. The end. Thank you for listening, Dream Readers.